Hello there and welcome to the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulkif Farazan. And it's a wonderful Wednesday morning here in Sri Lanka as the political landscape in the country is heating up. As the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is gearing up to announce its presidential candidate. Now the much anticipated announcement of the SLPP's presidential candidate is to take place today at the party's head office located in Nelumawata in Battaramulla. Now the ceremony is expected to be opened by none other than former President Mahinda Rajapaksa just around 8 o'clock this morning. Now this is a very important moment for the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna as it is about to announce its candidate who will run for the highest office in the country. Now, in recent weeks, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has made it clear. They even made announcements officially stating that they will not be backing President Ranil Wickremesinghe in his bid for president in September on the 21st. However, that they will be fielding their own candidate. Now, at the same time, several ranks in the SLPP have said that no, we will be backing the president. They've said that the momentum gained over the past few years or the stability achieved in the country over the past 2 years since the crisis after President Ranil Wickremesinghe took office should be continued, and thus they will be supporting the president. Now, they have also written letters to the SLPP's General Secretary of their decision to support the president in his election campaign. At a time when the SLPP has said that no, they will be fielding their own candidate. The SLPP has said that the ranks that are dissenting from the party's view of fielding its own candidate and supporting another would face actually disciplinary action. Now, responses have been going back and forth from these SLPP members as we wait for the SLPP to announce their presidential candidate for the presidential election in September. At the same time, a total of 18 presidential hopefuls have submitted their nominations to run for office. Now, among them is the current president, then opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, NPP leader Anuruddha Kumar Dissanayake, then Field Marshal Sam Fonseca, and many others. Now, you can actually check out that list on our website, that's www.newsfirst.lk. Now, at the same time, last evening or late last evening, a major development took place where all this time there was speculation that Dhammika Pereira would be the candidate of the SLPP. Now, he also mentioned that if the party decides to field him as the candidate, he is ready to take up office. Now, last evening he had written to SLPP General Secretary, Attorney at Law Sagar Karyawasam, conveying that he has decided to drop out of his bid to run for president. Now, at the same time, the local newspapers had indicated that the national organizer of the SLPP, Namal Rajapaksa, is likely to be announced as the candidate for the presidential election from the SLPP. Now, who is supporting whom in this presidential election? Now, yesterday morning, the Tamil Progressive Alliance, following deliberations among their committee members, announced that they would be backing opposition leader Sajith Premadasa in his bid to become president of the country. At the same time, the High Command of the All Ceylon Makkal Congress, or the ACMC, now that's led by Rishad Badiuddin, a former minister as well. Now, the High Command of this ACMC met last evening and they held extensive deliberations to decide on who they will support in their for the presidential election on the 21st of September. Now, the High Command had discussed this matter in length and they have decided that their decision will be announced on the 14th of August. That's 1 day ahead of the deadline or 1 day ahead of the date to accept nominations for the presidential election. Now, sticking with the presidential election, now officials from various election monitoring organizations have been summoned to the Election Commission today for a meeting. Now this meeting is going to be chaired by the chairman of the Election Commission. Now there are around 7 local election monitoring bodies in the country, and these organizations will be at the Election Commission for this meeting. Now in addition, separate discussions are also set to take place with the heads of government institutions that are responsible for providing infrastructure for the election, which will also take place today at the Election Commission. Now representatives from key institutions, the Ceylon Electricity Board, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, and many other organizations are also expected to be at this meeting. Now speaking of election monitors, international election monitors are often a common sight at local elections. Now this time around as well, there is a possibility of international monitors visiting Sri Lanka to monitor the process of the election. Now according to local election monitoring agencies, the European Election Monitoring Organization is expected to be in Sri Lanka. Now according to PAFREL, that's one of the local election monitoring bodies, that's the People's Action for a Free and Fair Election. They are also in talks with Asian election monitoring organizations to visit Sri Lanka and monitor the election process. Now just to give you a background to this, over the years we've had many elections, and during each election there are certain incidents of election law violations that are taking place. So these monitors provide an independent view on what these election law violations are, and they also give their insights on how the election process is going on, and that is something crucial for an election to be carried out smoothly, especially when there are so many candidates running for president on the September 21st presidential election. Now 2 years ago, you and I would have been standing in queues, petrol queues, kerosene queues, cooking gas queues, and so on. 2 years ago, Sri Lanka entered into one of the worst economic crises in its history. Following that, Sri Lanka's central bank announced that it would be defaulting on servicing its external debt. So thereafter, Sri Lanka stopped servicing its debt, and then it approached the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, for a program to support Sri Lanka's economy, and thereby a new program, the Extended Fund Facility Arrangement, was provided to Sri Lanka on the 20th of March 2023. Now this program aims to support Sri Lanka's economic policies and reforms with a focus on restoring macroeconomic stability, debt sustainability, and safeguarding financial stability, while also promoting structural reforms. Now the IMF program amounts to a total of around $3 billion US. Now Sri Lanka has already received 3 tranches of this IMF program. Now each tranche is released after an IMF team visits Sri Lanka and conducts a very comprehensive review on the progress achieved by Sri Lankan authorities in implementing reforms and achieving the targets that have been set out in this Extended Fund Facility program that is supported by the IMF. Now Sri Lanka's State Minister of Finance, who has been attending IMF meetings locally and overseas for Sri Lanka, announced that the next review of Sri Lanka's IMF program will take place after the presidential election is held. That's after the 21st of September this year. Now he said that the IMF team will arrive in Sri Lanka thereafter in order to review the progress that has been achieved by Sri Lanka, and also check if Sri Lanka is complying with all the targets that has been set out in the Extended Fund Facility. Now the IMF's commitment to Sri Lanka was underscored during a recent visit by an IMF team headed by Senior Mission Chief Peter Brewer. Now following their visit to Sri Lanka, now they held meetings with State Minister of Finance Ranasinghe, then the Central Bank, the Treasury, and also President Ranasinghe. Now following this meeting, Head of Mission Peter Brewer and his team released a statement to the media. Now, in this statement, they warned that moving away from the policies adopted or slipping away from these policies pose a risk to the stability that has been achieved. Now, they have been repeatedly saying that Sri Lanka is on a knife edge, and the achievements that have been recorded so far need to be protected in order to protect the poor and vulnerable segments in Sri Lankan society. Now, he also said that it is important to keep with the reform agenda in order to achieve economic stability and for the economy to recover in Sri Lanka. Now, this team was in Sri Lanka from the 25th of July to the 2nd of August. Now, that's Sri Lanka's economic development. Now, while Sri Lanka was in crisis, several countries came forward and helped Sri Lanka with aid, in financial aid and including material aid as well. Now, India was at the forefront at that time, stepping forward and giving almost more than $3 billion in assistance. Now, even Bangladesh provided Sri Lanka with a certain amount, roughly around $200 million as well as an exchange with Sri Lanka. Now, speaking of Bangladesh, Bangladesh is in crisis right now, not economically, but politically. All this started because of one word that was used by former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to describe those who are protesting against the quota allocated in government jobs for the families of freedom fighters. Now, the freedom fighters are those who fought against the Pakistanis at that time in order to secure independence for Bangladesh. And Sheikh Hasina's father was considered as one of the leading figures and was also the former leader of Bangladesh, one of the first in Bangladesh post-independence. Now, the student activists had been protesting, demanding a change for this, and they had protested, and that led to violence breaking out across Bangladesh with a severe crackdown by the Hasina government at that time. Now, the matter also was taken up in the Bangladesh Supreme Court, which said to revert back to the original decision, but yet protests continued and the violence spread all over the place, and more than 400 people have been killed to date due to the violence that broke out in Bangladesh. Now, in a major development, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate, has been appointed as the head of the interim government of Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh's President's Office Secretary Joinal Abidin has confirmed this, that Dr. Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate and also known as the banker of the poor for introducing a local microcredit experiment in 1983 known as the Grameen Bank, will be appointed as the head of the interim government. Now, the formation of the interim government took place, or it was decided upon following a meeting between the Bangladesh president, the heads of the military and the activists over the past 2 days. Now, the Bangladesh president's press secretary announced that the remaining members of the interim government will be finalized following consultations with all other political parties. Now, at the same time, the Bangladesh president also ordered the release of opposition leader Khalida Zia, who had been imprisoned by the Hasina government on various charges. Now, she is expected to be officially released later today from prison or from house arrest as well, where she will later attend meetings with political figures. Now, opposition figures have raised concern over the spread of violence in Bangladesh, despite Sheikh Hasina fleeing the country and resigning from the post of Prime Minister. Now, Bangladesh is still unsettled, and there are demands by the families of victims that have been put forward to the interim government seeking justice for the victims of the violence that has spread since July 16th, after those comments were made by Sheikh Hasina describing the protesters, as she referred to them in a certain word that has been offensive, that is offensive in the Bangladeshi language, where she described them as those who were fighting against Bangladesh in the fight for freedom with Pakistan. Now, at the same time, while violence is growing, the bodies of 20 Amavi League members and their families and supporters have been recovered from different parts of the country. Now, this is a growing trend now in Bangladesh. As you know, during the violence, there was an internet blackout. Social media was blocked in Bangladesh. Therefore, the trickling down of information was very, very slow. However, now more information is coming to light, and more bodies are also being recovered as a result of the violence. And at the same time, several ministers and state ministers and members of parliament who had attempted to flee the country as a result of the violence have been unsuccessful at the border with India and other countries, and they have tried to leave the country through the airport, where they have been detained by airport staff and protesters, and we are still awaiting details on where they are being held as well. Now, at the same time, in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan President Ranasinghe, speaking to a gathering yesterday, said if Sheikh Hasina, the then Prime Minister of Bangladesh, had released opposition figure Khalida Zia early on, Sheikh Hasina would still be Prime Minister, and there would not have been so much of violence in the country. Let's have a listen to what the President had to say.
Think of a country like Bangladesh, which is in turmoil. I don't want to speak about the politics of Bangladesh, friendly country, but it had to erupt at some time. While Sheikh Hasina has left, I still remember her because she gave us $200 million when we were really in need of money. So I think it's only fair to say some good word about a person who's really down at the moment. I also welcome the fact that Khalida Zia had been released from jail. If Sheikh Hasina had done it long ago, she would have still been Prime Minister. Let's hope there's tranquility in Bangladesh. I have no doubt there's tranquility. We should not panic. We are one of the largest investors. We are providing jobs in that country. So having said that, the world situation per se is not good. But that doesn't mean that Sri Lanka is moving out of it.
Those were the comments made by Sri Lankan President Ranasinghe on the developments taking place in Bangladesh. Now let's switch gears to the environment. Have you ever heard of bear attacks in Sri Lanka? Well, bear attacks are not uncommon, but rarely heard of in Sri Lanka. That's right. Now, the Department of Wildlife Conservation has decided to launch a comprehensive investigation after reports of bear attacks in the Polonnaruwa region. Now, this decision comes after incidents of bears attacking villagers and encroaching onto villages in certain areas. Now, Chandana Surya Bandara is the Director General of the Wildlife Conservation Department. Now, he said various factors need to be examined, including environment, climate, and also meteorological factors to determine why bears are attacking humans and encroaching onto villages. Now, in an unsettling incident, a wild bear had encroached into a village in the Diabedume area of Polonnaruwa and had attacked 5 people, and these individuals are in hospital getting treated for the bites following that incident. Now, in previous weeks also related incidents were reported from the sea area and Habarona areas as well. Now, the wild bear that had attacked the 5 people in the Diabedume area was captured last afternoon by personnel from the Department of Wildlife Conservation, and it was tranquilized. However, unfortunately, when it was being taken to the local veterinary office, it is reported that this wild bear had died. That's an unfortunate incident. This wild bear had apparently died while being taken to the veterinary office after it was tranquilized and captured. Now, the Department of Wildlife Conservation said that a post-mortem examination will be carried out to determine the exact cause of death of this wild animal. Now, let's move our attention from the environment to the Paris Olympics. Well, we were all hoping for some good news last night from sprinter Aruna Darshana, the Sri Lankan sensation who became the first Sri Lankan to qualify for a semi-final in the 400 meters men's sprint at an Olympic Games. Unfortunately, a tiny error disqualified him despite clocking a personal best in the semi-final. Now, Aruna Darshana first competed in the heats and clocked a personal best and was qualified into semi-final 2, becoming the first Sri Lankan to qualify in such an event in a semi-final as well. Now, yesterday, with a stellar performance of 44.75 seconds, a personal best, he came in 5th in semi-final round 2 at the Paris Olympics at the Stadium de France. However, he was disqualified citing a lane infringement under rule TR 17.2.3. A devastating blow not only for him but for an entire nation that was awaiting some good news last night. Now, the semi-final heat was won by Kirani James with a personal best of 43.78 seconds. Well, despite that, Aruna Darshana has made the nation proud by becoming the first Sri Lankan to make it to the semi-finals in the men's 400 meters sprint at an Olympic Games. Well, that's a wrap of this edition of the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfikar Farzan. But stay with News First, as a major announcement is expected from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna on their presidential candidate who will run for president from the SLPP. Stay with News First as we will have all the details, and do follow us on our social media platforms on Instagram, on X and Facebook, and our YouTube channel as well for all the very latest. And don't forget to subscribe to our latest WhatsApp channel as well. Have an amazing day ahead. Take care and God bless.